My neighbor demanded I pay for half of his driveway expansion, arguing it'll improve property values for both of us. When I declined, he dug into my yard and said, "You'll thank me later." I quietly showed him the property line survey and whispered, "You owe me for damages, and you're removing that driveway." I've lived in this neighborhood for 12 years. Small place just outside Fort Wayne, Indiana. Nothing fancy. A quiet street with big yards, old trees, and neighbors who usually mind their own business. That's the kind of life I wanted when I bought the place. I'd worked my whole life in logistics, always on the move, always dealing with people and their demands. I just wanted to retire somewhere peaceful. Then Tom moved in next door. He bought the place in early spring 2 years ago. Nice enough house, about the same size as mine. He was maybe early 40s, slick hair, expensive truck, always acting like he was smarter than everyone else. He worked from home. Some kind of tech job I never asked, and constantly had people over doing upgrades. Painters, landscapers, driveway resealers, window guys. All day, every day. I tried to be neighborly at first. Greeted him when he moved in. Brought over a 6-pack. He accepted it like he was doing me a favor. That was our first conversation. The vibe was strange. Like he thought this place wasn't good enough for him, and he was just fixing it up to bring it to his standards. He made some weird comments about how this neighborhood could really use a facelift. I let it slide. We didn't talk much after that, just nods across the lawn. I kept my distance. Then last spring, he showed up in my yard with blueprints. I was in the middle of cleaning up the front beds. The ground had finally thawed, and I was pulling out dead leaves when he walked over, sunglasses on, rolled up plans under his arm. "Hey," he said like we were old pals. "Got a minute?" I stood up and wiped my hands. "What's up?" He unrolled the papers on the hood of his truck. "Thinking about expanding my driveway. Figured it's time. Gonna double it, add a whole second lane. Way more space. Makes sense, right? And here's the thing, I was thinking we could split the cost. It's gonna boost both our property values. Clean up the front of the street." I looked at the plans. He'd sketched out the current driveway, then this massive expansion that pushed right into the strip of grass between our houses. At least a foot onto my side. Maybe more. I pointed. "That's my yard." He grinned like he'd expected the question. "Barely. You've got room. It'll look seamless. Trust me, this'll help both of us." "You'll thank me." "No," I said. "That's my property. I'm not paying for a driveway I don't need, and I don't want you building on my side." His face twitched just a little, like he didn't like being told no. "Come on," he said. "You're thinking small. Look at the long-term value." I said, "No, Tom. Stay on your side." He looked like he wanted to argue, but he backed off, rolled up his plans, walked back to his driveway without another word. I thought that was the end of it. A week later, I came home from the hardware store to the sound of a cement truck. There were workers digging out the strip of grass between our houses. Tom stood with his arms crossed, watching like a foreman. I parked and walked over, trying to keep calm. "What the hell is this?" He barely looked at me. "Driveway work. Told you it was happening. You're on my property." He waved his hand. "They're professionals. It'll be clean. You won't even notice." "That's not the point." He turned to me, dead serious. "You're being difficult. I'm improving this place. You should be thanking me." I didn't say another word. I turned around, went inside, and pulled out the folder with my property survey. I'd had it since the day I closed on the house. Black and white, with clear lines. The side of the driveway he was digging into? Fully mine. Over 14 inches into my property, to be exact. I didn't tell him that day. I waited. I watched them finish the concrete. I watched him stand out front like he was proud of himself, like he'd pulled one over on me. He even bragged about it to another neighbor across the street. She didn't want to help, he said loud enough for me to hear from my porch. But hey, can't stop progress. I made copies of the survey. Took pictures of the new concrete overlapping the line. Called a property lawyer. Quietly. No warning. A week later, I walked over to him while he was watering his new driveway. I handed him the survey with a red circle drawn around the property line and where his driveway crossed it. He looked down, smirked. So, I leaned in close. You owe me for damages, I said quietly. And you're removing that driveway. He scoffed. Good luck with that. I just nodded. Okay. That's when things really started. After that talk in the driveway, I didn't speak to Tom for a few days. But he knew I was serious. I stopped waving. I stopped pretending. I went quiet and I stayed watching. That's what people like him never expect, someone who's patient. My lawyer, Rachel, was sharp. She looked over the survey and photos I took and said, "He's trespassed and altered your property without permission. That's civil damages. You've got a case." I asked, "Can I make him tear it out?" She nodded. "Not only that, but you could force him to pay for restoration, grass, fencing, whatever was there before." She sent a formal letter to Tom. It was short, legal, and cold. It told him he had 14 days to remove the driveway that crossed the line and fix my yard, or we'd file a claim in court. He didn't respond. But a few days later, I found something in my mailbox. No envelope. Just a note scrawled on torn notebook paper. "You're being petty. Let it go. I'm not ripping up $8,000 of concrete. You'll get over it." No signature, but I knew it was him. Same arrogant tone. That night, I emailed Rachel. She said, "We'll move forward." Then things got uglier. I started noticing little things. My mailbox got knocked loose. Not destroyed, but it was tilting like someone backed into it on purpose. Then the side of my fence near his yard got hit. Looked like someone had thrown a cinder block at it. Not enough to break through, but enough to crack 2 planks. My security camera? The one mounted above my garage? Someone sprayed it with black paint. Just enough to blur the lens. Tom was smart. Not reckless, just sneaky. So I got smarter. I installed 2 new cameras, smaller, harder to spot. One aimed right at the shared property line. Another one behind the fence, pointing back at my yard. Both motion activated, night vision enabled. A week later, I caught him on camera. 1:14 a.m., a flashlight beam moves across my yard. Tom, in a hoodie, walking along the side of the driveway. He's holding something looked like a can. He bends down, sprays something on the edge of my lawn. Then walks back. Fast. Next morning, my grass was dead. A perfect line of brown spray-killed grass where his new concrete touched my yard. I sent the footage to Rachel. She didn't even flinch. "We'll add this to the claim. Harassment, property damage, and now trespassing caught on video." We filed that week. Tom must have gotten served at home. I didn't see it happen, but 2 days later, his whole tone changed. He stopped coming outside. His driveway sat quiet. He stopped watering it. Just vanished into his house. Then came the Facebook post. One of my other neighbors, Jen, sent it to me. She'd seen it in the local community group. Tom had posted a rant. "Imagine being so bored and bitter that you'd sue a neighbor over a few inches of concrete. Some people just hate seeing others improve their homes." Unreal. He didn't use my name, but everyone knew who he was talking about. The comments were mixed. Some of the neighbors defended him, "Oh, that's dumb, who cares?" But others knew better. One even commented, "You built over someone else's land, dude. That's not how it works." The court date was set for 6 weeks later. In the meantime, I made sure everything was clean on my end. Surveyor came out and reconfirmed the line. My photos were printed. The videos saved on a flash drive. When the day came, I showed up in a collared shirt and jeans. Calm. Quiet. Tom came in with some loud lawyer in a shiny suit who looked more annoyed than ready. The hearing lasted about 40 minutes. My lawyer laid out the photos, survey, and video. Their side? Tried to argue it was mutual confusion and that both parties benefit from the improvement. The judge didn't buy it. He looked right at Tom and said, You knowingly built on land that was not yours after being warned not to. You'll remove the construction and pay damages to the plaintiff. Tom's jaw tensed. His lawyer tried to argue for time or cost sharing. The judge cut him off. You'll comply in 30 days or face daily fines and lien enforcement. I walked out without looking back. After court, things should have been over. Tom was ordered to remove the section of the driveway on my property and pay me just over $4,200 in damages. That covered the property survey, the repair costs, and the legal fees. I thought he'd swallow his pride, deal with it, and move on. But some people don't know when to quit. 3 days after the hearing, I came home to the sound of a jackhammer. I stood there in my driveway, stunned. Tom had hired a crew, all right, but not to remove just the part of the driveway that crossed into my property. Nope. They were tearing up the entire thing. Both lanes. He stood off to the side, pacing like a madman, yelling into his phone, red-faced. I didn't say a word. Just watched. By the next day, his driveway was completely gone. Dirt, rebar, and broken concrete sat in piles. No work crew. Just a sign staked in the yard. No trespassing. Lawsuit pending. I knew that sign was meant to be a jab at me, but all it did was make him look unhinged. Then, about a week later, strange cars started showing up at his place. People in slacks and sunglasses. At first, I thought maybe it was a real estate agent. But they weren't taking photos or putting up signs. Then I noticed one of them had a clipboard with a state seal on it. I kept my mouth shut and waited. Sure enough, a letter showed up in my mailbox 2 days later. It was from the Fort Wayne Building Inspection Office. Someone had filed a report about an unpermitted structure and potential property encroachment. I called the number, confused. I hadn't filed anything beyond my own lawsuit. The woman on the phone said, "We received an anonymous complaint. We're required to inspect any recent construction for violations." That's when it hit me. One of the other neighbors must have filed it. Probably Jen. She'd told me before how Tom had replaced his back deck without any permits. It looked nice, but it extended pretty far into the yard, almost touching the old drainage line that runs through our lots. The city inspector came by the following week. I was home, so I watched from my window as he measured distances, took photos, and walked around with a laser level. I wasn't part of it, so I didn't ask questions. Then the real hammer dropped. One evening, I heard shouting next door. Tom, screaming on the phone, pacing again, slamming his screen door. I couldn't hear every word, but it was clear he was panicking. I caught pieces of it. They said I have to pull it down. No, I'm not paying a fine. They can't do this. Turns out, the deck wasn't the only issue. Tom had run electrical lines under the new driveway without permits. And not just for lights, but for a car charging port. The inspector found it all. Everything was out of code. Unsafe. Built over a sewer easement. The city ordered him to tear it all out. The deck, the wiring, even part of the landscaping that was covering a venting system for groundwater. The fine? $18,000 if he didn't comply within 60 days. I found out from Jen, who had a cousin at the permitting office. He pissed off the wrong people, she told me. They're checking everything now. Tom went quiet again. No construction. No crew. Just him, stuck in that house with dirt piles, exposed wires, and a growing list of fines. I saw his truck parked in the driveway less and less. Then it stopped showing up altogether. A few weeks later, I saw a for sale sign go up in his yard. But it gets even better. Tom listed the house fast. No open house, no flyers, no glossy photos. Just a plain real estate listing with ASS condition in big bold letters. He tried to look proud, like he was moving on to something better, but it was clear he was cornered. Between the court ruling, the city fines, and his half-destroyed property, he didn't have a lot of choice. He still wouldn't speak to me. Didn't look my way. Just glared sometimes if we crossed paths on the sidewalk. The listing stayed up for a few weeks. Then suddenly, it was marked pending. I figured some flipper or cash buyer must have seen the opportunity and jumped. What I didn't know, what Tom definitely didn't know, was who the buyer really was. It wasn't just some random investor. It was my niece, Tara. She'd just turned 28. Smart, tough, and done with renting. I told her everything that happened with Tom over the past year. She listened to every word and said, "I want it." I didn't expect her to go through with it, but she did. She worked with a different agent, used her fiancé's last name for the paperwork, and made a low cash offer that undercut the asking price by almost 30 grand. With all the fines and violations hanging over him, Tom accepted the offer within a day. The sale went through in late October. On move-in day, I was standing in my driveway trimming branches when Tom came over, acting like he was the bigger man. "Well," he said, faking a smile, "I guess we're finally rid of each other." I didn't even answer. Then Tara pulled up. She stepped out of the car with her fiancé and started unloading boxes. Tom stared at her, then looked at me, then back at her. It took him a second, but the realization hit him hard. He pointed. "Wait, she's the buyer." Tara turned and smiled. "Hi, Tom. I'm your new neighbor." The look on his face was better than any court ruling. This was a setup. I finally spoke. "No, Tom. This was real estate." He stormed off without another word, got into his truck, and tore out of the driveway one last time. But even that wasn't the final blow. 2 weeks after he left, Tara got a letter in the mail from the county. One last outstanding lien had been filed under Tom's name. $6,300 for improper drainage that he had never disclosed during the sale. Since it wasn't attached to the house title directly, it was his responsibility. Tara called him. Calmly. "Hi, Tom. You forgot one last thing. There's a lien in your name. Either you pay it, or I can report it to collections on your credit." He hung up on her. She sent the letter in anyway. Now his credit is wrecked. His house is gone. His pride? Even worse. And the best part? Every morning, I get to walk out onto my perfectly mowed lawn, wave to my niece across the yard, and sip my coffee while standing on my side of the property line, untouched. Life started to feel peaceful again. For the first time in over a year, there was no noise from construction, no shouting, no stupid games. Just quiet mornings and evenings with my dog, a clean yard, and a neighbor I actually liked, my niece, Tara. But Tom wasn't done. A month after he left, Tara knocked on my door holding a certified envelope. "Came for me," she said. "But it's addressed from Tom." I took it and opened it at my kitchen table. Inside was a single typed letter, 2 pages long, and a copy of a document with city letterhead. The letter started off bitter. "Congratulations. You and your niece got what you wanted. You win. But just so you know, I'm not going down without making things right." He went on about how unfair it was, how we trapped him, how the system favored people who play small and don't understand long-term investment. The usual narcissist talk. But then it shifted. "Since you like rules so much, I did some digging of my own. You might want to take a good look at what your lovely city had planned for your land. Especially the part behind your fence." That's where the document came in. It was a proposal from the city dated 2 years prior, long before I ever had a fight with Tom. It laid out a long-term storm drain expansion project. Apparently, the city planned to reroute part of the old underground drainage system that ran behind both our houses, and they'd been slowly buying up easements in the area to do it, including mine. According to the paper, they'd approached the previous owners of Tom's house and even talked to my old neighbor before Tom moved in about temporary access. I must have signed something at closing that mentioned it, but I never thought much of it. It was one of those standard municipal access clauses buried in the fine print. Now, according to the timeline, the city was getting ready to act on it. Within the next 18 months, they were going to dig up a 10-foot wide section behind my yard, tear up part of the fence line, and replace piping. My stomach sank. Tom knew. He must have found the plans while dealing with his own permit disaster. He probably figured if he had to lose, so did I. I didn't panic. I went straight to the city office the next morning, Tara by my side. They confirmed it. Yes, the storm drain project was still happening. Yes, my property was part of the plan. No, they weren't buying the land, but yes, they had the right to dig temporarily. But then Tara asked the question that changed everything. Does the line cross into my property? The man at the counter clicked through his files. Oh, yes. Actually, your lot is going to be impacted more than his was. The old lines run right under where your new deck is going in. We both looked at each other. Tara smiled. Then I want to file an objection. And she did. She brought in her own inspector, hired a local land use attorney, and started pushing back. Turns out, the city had done a sloppy job documenting their easement renewal paperwork after Tom's mess. They never properly filed it with her new deed. Legally, they'd have to negotiate again. It delayed the whole project. As of now, everything's frozen. The city is going back to the drawing board. They sent letters out to other neighbors instead, offering buyouts or alternatives. We haven't heard anything in months. In the end, Tom's final trick backfired. Instead of getting us tangled in a mess, he handed us a chance to fix a future problem before it started. Tara's lawyer even sent him a final letter thanking him for bringing the issue to light, with a polite line at the end that said, "Your concern for the integrity of the neighborhood is appreciated." We never got a reply. Winter hit hard that year. Snow piled up fast in Fort Wayne, thicker than we'd had in years. I spent my days shoveling, sipping black coffee, and watching my niece and her fiancé settle into their new home. The silence next door was still strange. After all that chaos, it was like the house itself had gone quiet. Like the land had breathed out. I figured that was the end. That Tom had gone off somewhere to start over and stew in his own regret. I was wrong. It started with a knock. Early one morning in January, I opened my door and there was a man in a coat holding a clipboard. Not from the city. From a bank. "Are you the previous owner of this residence?" he asked, pointing toward Tara's house. "No," I said. "My niece owns it now." He nodded. "Thanks. We've just had a foreclosure notice bounce back, and this address was on the contact trail." That set off something in my gut. A foreclosure? Tom's name was still coming up? I called Tara. She made a few calls of her own, dug up the records from closing. That's when we found the final twist. Tom hadn't paid off his contractor. Remember that second driveway he built? The one that crossed into my yard? The original pour before I had it removed? Well, turns out Tom stiffed the contractor who poured it. Claimed he was overcharged and refused to pay the final $5,000. The contractor tried to sue, but Tom delayed, dodged court, and ran out the clock. But before he sold the house, the contractor had quietly filed a mechanic's lien against the property. It hadn't been properly flagged in the title search, one of those rare but costly oversights. So now, months after Tara bought the place, the contractor's lawyer was circling back, trying to recover the money. It wasn't Tara's fault. But legally, it was tied to her house. We were furious. I'd gone to war with Tom. Tara had bought the house out of pride and revenge. And now we were dealing with the one thing we hadn't accounted for, Tom's unpaid mess. Tara's fiancé wanted to sue the contractor, the title company, the whole damn town. But Tara? She made a call. To Tom. He answered. His voice was shaky, almost like he'd been expecting the call. "You dragged this out for over a year," she told him calmly. "And you still left your dirt behind." He tried to talk fast, make excuses. I didn't know. Look, the system is no. She cut him off. "You knew. You always knew." Then she sent him a photo of his old driveway. The one he paid for. The one he bragged about. Flattened, dug up, replaced by soft green sod and a row of hedges. She ended the call with, "You didn't just lose this house. You built a monument to your failure and left it in my yard. And now I get to bury it, one root at a time." After that, she filed a claim against the title company. They took responsibility and settled the lien out of court. Tom? He's gone. The last we heard, he moved to a small rental an hour away. Word is he's working at a car dealership. No more contractors. No more fancy truck. Just quiet, bitter silence. As for me, I've learned something. I should have handled it differently from the start. Maybe if I hadn't gone quiet and watched, maybe if I'd confronted him early on, it wouldn't have spiraled. But I waited. I let him step deeper into the mess. And part of me liked watching him drown. That's my mistake. I didn't stop the fire. I just made sure the wind blew in his direction. But I sleep fine, because every morning I still drink my coffee. I walk the edge of my yard. I see the fresh hedges, the smooth grass, the clean fence line. And I remember how one man's pride couldn't fit inside his own property, so it ended up buried in someone else's. Permanently.